What is up, everybody? Enderheart here, back with Cipher Secret, and today we will be reading Chapter 27, To the Nightmare Realm, Part 2. As some of you may notice, that I have gotten a new mic, and hopefully it's more pleasing, and it gets more audio across, because I'm really looking forward to that, and that's the reason I wanted a really good mic. I'm home. This is what Kandi announced as she proceeded to make her way to the living room after taking off her shoes, but still using her socks. She liked to walk around like this because it felt comfortable, and adding with the wooden-made floor, it felt like she was ice skating. However, Kandi no longer had time to be pretending to be ice skating on the floor of her living room, because she had serious business to attend with her books and internet. There was something plainly wrong here. All it had to do with that prism. It started with that prism. Kandi had taken some mental notes on that prism. While prisms are transparent, this one was all black. Her glasses never failed her. The prism looked like a long, hexagonal one, but its ends were triangular shaped. Something felt very, very wrong. Every time Kandi thought about it, she could feel the butterflies in her stomach, and she would grow nervous. She thought that only happened whenever she thought about music camp. Man, she hated that place. Walking towards the living room, Kandi noticed her uncle and aunt watching a random sitcom while sitting together in the sofa. Kandi's aunt, a middle-aged woman named Olga Jackson, turned to her with a soft smile, which reminded her of a grandma's smile more than an aunt's one. "You're already back, sweetie? Why don't you come here and watch this sitcom with us?" she invited. Olga was usually nicer than her husband, Gary, who was more reserved. Many people mistook this for aloofness, but he was a very cool guy when you have the chance to know him. Kandi looked at the TV. It was a tempting offer, but she had more important things to do right now. And they had to do with that strange prism and this feeling in her guts. The feeling that something was wrong. Sorry, Aunt Olga, but I need to, do homework," she lied, but just after realizing what she had said, she corrected herself. I mean, non-specific excuse that I'm inviting to go upstairs. Bye!" Without waiting for an answer, Kandi headed upstairs and into her room. She closed the door behind her and locked it swiftly. Kandi sighed and jumped onto the bed, grabbing the nearest plush toy, which turned out to be a blue dog with colorful dots. She hugged it tightly to her chest while looking at the ceiling. "I hope you have the answers to this, Dipper." It was snowing fiercely, and that was what scared Dipper the most. It was snowing. Snowing in hell. In hell, snowing. It was snowing in hell. Oh, but that wasn't the creepy part yet. The creepy part was that he couldn't feel the snow at all. The snow was on his hair, under his feet, maybe inside his shirt and everywhere else, but he couldn't feel it. He didn't feel cold. At first he felt cold, but the further they walked, the hotter it would become. He'd see pine trees all around, and snow as well, but now the place was becoming hotter than the Sahara Desert itself. All that was creeping Dipper out in a way he couldn't explain. The twins and Azaf had already taken off their jackets, because they were almost dying with how hot it actually was in hell. Was this even hell to begin with? The mentors should know, but he was too bothered to ask anything. The mentors. They were still on their demon forms. Behind them, Bill was twirling his cane in boredom. Beatrice was looking ahead, clearly bored as well, and Kinesi had his eyes closed in deep in thought, probably focusing on something really important that wasn't his business. Obviously, Dipper wanted to know. Curiosity always got the best of him. But Kinesi was a demon, a dangerous demon that could kill him in a pinch. Dipper always made sure to remember that when he was around any demon or unnatural creature 3 times more powerful than him. But he was a demon too, so should he fear himself? Dipper knew he should, because he could kill someone, or even himself. The thought made him shiver unwillingly. Everything was so awkward. One day he was human, and then one summer changed everything. This led Dipper to wonder. What if he hadn't gone to Gravity Falls? What would have happened? What would have changed? Would he be in this mess? Would he still have to kill a wyvern and then be forced to travel down to hell? He suppressed a chuckle. It would have been funny if it wasn't downright tragic. Really, really tragic. Trying to stop thinking about the mentors for a second, Dipper started thinking about the object Azaf was carrying earlier. With all the commotion, he had forgotten to ask about it, and was going to do so, but one part of his mind told him to drop the subject there and then. That was when Dipper forgot about the subject for a minute, and then he completely erased the question from his mind. Was it really worth it? Was all this worth the effort? How did he even get himself in a deal with Bill Cipher? I can torture your whole family for an eternity. This sent shivers through Dipper's spine. He decided to just forget about it. Dipper could feel his lungs being cooked inside of his body. Bill seemed a little amused by his struggle, as every step seemed like torture. All of the apprentices had been having trouble breathing ever since that part of hell turned from an acceptable heat to burning as much as hell itself. Dipper glared at Bill at the corner of his eyes. If the demon had a mouth, he'd be smirking. Why did Dipper even expect a change? He had seen Bill's weaknesses. He had seen him cry. Over him. Over a pathetic half-demon. Over an apprentice. Dipper was now confused. Was this a good thing or a bad thing? He had seen his mentor crying over him, over his quote-unquote death. But was that really a weakness? Was Dipper Bill's weakness? Was he really that important at the point of someone crying over him? An all-powerful dream demon, no less? Dipper bit his lower lip. The sensation felt so awkward. Was he really important to Bill, or just another pawn that he needed? No, he wasn't important. He was a pawn. He was just a pawn. And that's what he's commended to be. Dipper felt like he was walking inside of a volcano. Not that he had walked inside many volcanoes before, but it still counted. All of the apprentices were wheezing as their pace became slower than when they actually started walking. Dipper had already felt that sensation before, the sensation of his lungs burning. Suddenly, he stopped, and everything seemed to stop as well. Dipper felt the bile rising in his throat. He could see it. He could see all the corpses. He could see all the missing limbs. He could feel the despair. He could smell the sickeningly metallic aroma of blood. Dipper ran to the nearest pine tree he could find and immediately vomited everything he had eaten before. Right after doing this, Dipper took a deep breath, his lungs aching terribly, and the aftertaste of vomit wasn't making it any better. Dipper took a few seconds to regain his balance after a moment of dizziness. He'd never expected that this memory would affect him so much, but it did. However, as Dipper turned around to apologize for running off so suddenly, he realized something. He wasn't in the nightmare realm. Not anymore. Where am I? He was no longer in the snowy forest. He was in a hallway now, and in the end of it there was a double door, painted in black. The blood-red walls seemed to confine him as Dipper stared at the end of the hall, golden irises focusing on that door only. He hesitatingly took one light step forward, almost tiptoeing. Was he willing to do this? Where was he? What was behind that door? Why did he feel like he needed to know this? Again, curiosity took the best of him, and Dipper seemed to forget all the questions. Biting his lower lip, he took another step forward, and the floor under him seemed to slowly crumble, like any wrong move would cause it to collapse under his weight. Dipper hissed slightly as his heart beat faster upon noticing how the floor creaked when he took another step forward. Maybe that place was old? No, highly unlikely. The paint on the walls didn't seem to be old enough, and the double door looked new and recently clean. The floor also seemed strong enough to handle a normal person's weight, but why couldn't it handle this? What could that possibly mean? Dipper started walking again towards the door, ignoring the sounds of floor crumbling under him, ignoring the walls confining him and making him feel claustrophobic. Closing his eyes, Dipper focused on nothing, on the absolute nothingness. That was when he stopped completely at the sound of something falling onto the floor and shattering into pieces. Crash. "Let me go!" along with a child's cry. With his heart racing, Dipper stiffened briefly and opened his eyes. In front of him, there was a giant, pitch-black double door, the one he had seen at the end of the corridor. Dipper gulped. He felt like 1,000,000 butterflies were flying around in his stomach. The strange sensation made him feel worse. After he heard that cry and the sound of shattering glass, everything had stopped and fell silent. A little too silent. Dipper jumped. "Let me go! I want my big brother!" Without any hesitation, Dipper took a step forward. He didn't know what to do, but many possibilities were passing through his mind. Break in? Call somebody? Go away and pretend like nothing had happened? Hissing sharply, Dipper knew he needed to think quickly, but he wasn't one to work under pressure. No, not at all. Adrenaline rushed through his veins, making Dipper's whole body tremble in aggravation. Without a second thought, Dipper kicked the door, which suspiciously opened too easily, and what he saw made him freeze, in place, completely stiff. Behind the black doors, there was a completely messed room, with a broken bed and vases, torn curtains, and a sickeningly sweet scent around the room. The first things Dipper noticed were the bloody walls and floor. There was blood under his shoes, and for the first time Dipper was glad that he was wearing them. The scene that was happening in the middle of the room, however, was so loud that Dipper couldn't believe it, immediately feeling regret for kicking the door so loudly and wishing he hadn't done so. "Help me!" That was what the child had shouted at him. He couldn't really recognize the child's gender because of the big eyelashes and feminine body, but the gender wasn't the biggest of his problems right now. The most noticeable thing was the child's eyes, the child's golden eyes. Golden irises, much like his, which made Dipper suppress a shaky breath that was threatening to escape his mouth. Long, white hair was sprawled everywhere, making a mess of the child's face and contrasting their golden eyes. There were white pieces of cloth everywhere but on the child themselves, meaning that they should have been wearing a shirt before. Fear was evident in the child's eyes as they could not stop staring and screaming at the creature in front of them, sharp canine teeth. But out of all of this, what scared Dipper the most? Perhaps it was the blood clawing through his shoes. Perhaps it was the child's blood-curdling screams in utter fear and guilt. No, nothing of this scared Dipper more than the creature in front of him. The creature from his nightmares. A scream died in Dipper's throat, as for his shock overtook the fear and replaced it. That was the creature he had made a deal with, and the creature that he had trusted. That made Dipper think, why? Why had he been so foolish? Why was he trusting a creature he didn't know? Just why? Again, Dipper was snapped out of his thoughts when the creature hissed at the child under him, keeping a tight grip on their throat at the point of choking them. For some reason, none of them were noticing Dipper standing there, as if he was invisible. Dipper didn't know if that was good or bad, but he needed to do something. Unfortunately, his body had no other plans. He was paralyzed. The child struggled and writhed, but the creature didn't let go. Instead, its grip tightened around their neck as they gasped for air, their neck already turning red. Dipper gritted his teeth and took a step back. And then another one, and another one, and another one. That was when Dipper noticed that he was leaning against the wall, and that was his chance. Without taking his eyes off the creature and the child, Dipper slowly touched the wall, trying to find the door to exit that vile place. However, there was no door there. Not anymore, at least. The door was gone, completely vanished. Dipper couldn't believe it. The door was his only way to enter, and the only way to go out. He was stuck. "Help me," the child murmured fearfully with the lack of air hitting them. Dipper felt useless, unable to help that kid. He wanted to move and attack that thing, but his legs were too shaky, and he felt like he was going to faint at any minute. But then one thing happened. The creature let go of the child's neck, dropping him to the floor. Dipper thought the creature was done, or maybe got bored, but it had all just started. The child on the floor gasped when the creature lunged for them. The creature bit the child's neck, earning a scream from them. The scream echoed around the room and through Dipper's skull, piercing his mind. He fell to the floor, too scared to even move, as the creature sunk its sharp teeth on the child's neck until a sickening, crackling sound was heard, and blood spilled all over, both on the floor and Dipper's face. He screamed. Dipper never wanted this. All he wanted was to have a normal life, like a normal kid, to grow up fast and even have a girlfriend. But no. This had to happen. He had to make a deal with a demon and to protect his sister and her sanity. Why was he so selfless? Why did he risk his own life in exchange for his sister's? At what cost? Dipper already had the answer to this. He knew why he risked his life for Mabel so much. Because that's what a Pines would do. When the creature was done, the scenario around them started to fade. The creepy part was that the child's corpse was still there, facing Dipper with those lifeless golden irises. Dipper shivered. He started to walk backwards as the creature stood up and turned to him, its bloody mouth hanging, revealing sharp teeth. It started to walk towards Dipper slowly, each step taking at least 2 seconds. Dipper thought he had enough time to run, but he didn't. The creature stopped in front of Dipper as he stopped as well. Silence reigned as the dead child's irises watched Dipper intently, and he felt like those eyes were staring at his soul. He turned his attention to the creature that was now watching him with a large grin. The creepiest grin Dipper had ever seen. It lunged at him.